What we're going to be doing today is a foundation addition to this house. You can see what the homeowner has already done before I got here. He's saw cut the stucco and removed it exactly to his roof and wall line. So he'll remove that plastic once he gets his walls and roof up. Here's the drawing. This is what we're building right here. This is the foundation plan right here. All these little numbers, this SD1 number 3, that's the other sheet referring to that detail of this, what it's pointing to, which is a 4x4 post. So it's going to have some information on this other page about that. Also another detail here, SD1 7. It's on the same page as this one, but number 7 detail on that page. So that's going to give you information, it looks like, on your where the new meets the old. And now here's your basic foundation details here. SD1, same page, different detail numbers, 12 and 18. Looks like a post right here, similar to this one. The only difference is this is on existing, so that's a retrofit, whereas this is going to be a wet set. And here's some information here. 12 inches by 10 inch, which doesn't really refer to anything, because we're not. This is showing a stem wall rather than a slab foundation pour. So it's been changed. So this detail is going to go back to a raised foundation, like a stem wall with a crawl space, where we're actually just doing a turn down footing with a continuous slab. So these details are pretty much history. This one will remain the same, this one. These right here all have changed. Let me take a look at that page next to see what we got. Here's the detail we're actually building right here. What it's showing is your width of the foundation, which goes all the way around the perimeter, 12 inches wide, and there's your depth, 24-inch minimum. Below the outside existing grade, so you got to be 2 feet. Plus they want 8 inches above, which we're going to have. That's minimal, by the way, 8, so it could be more. But the main thing is 24 below native. And here's your rebar layout. 2 bars, number 4, top and bottom. Here. And on your slab, you've got number 4, 16-inch on center each way, 2-inch sand bed, 10 mil visqueen. So you got your visqueen going on the dirt, sand over the top of that, then your rebar tie. And the rebar, the number 4, has a turn down in it right here. So that turn down is going to go every 16 all the way around. Now, well, let's look at our tie-in to the existing. Here it is here. Detail 7. You got an 8-inch minimum embed right here. There's your existing side, existing concrete footing. Drill hole filled with Simpson set adhesive, typical or equivalent. Then you've got your rod here, a number 5 deformed bar or threaded rod. Entire face of existing concrete shall be clean and free of latents and intentionally roughened to a full amplitude, approximately 1/4 inch where new concrete is placed against existing concrete. So you've got 2 of these at top, 2 at bottom, where the footing meets the existing house. Let's go look exactly where that is. So we've got a 5/8 rod. They want a 3/4 inch hole. That's what it says here. 5 and 5/8 minimum embed in that detail. Diameter of drill hole 3/4. Diameter of drill hole for rods is 3/4 also. Here's where that's talking about the tie-in. So you got 2 at top, 2 at bottom, epoxied in. So here's the details we just looked at. We looked at 18, and then we looked at the tie-in, number 7. The 12 is not being used because that's for a different type of foundation. Also, we're going to be doing a block wall as well. Now here's your block wall for the block wall foundation. There's 3 different methods can be used to achieve the same structural value. We will be using this one, deep and narrow. Okay, that's the basic idea of reading a foundation plan. That's the structural part of the foundation. Then you have the detail page too of that. And now we're just going to hand dig this out because it's a small job. I just have my little Makita electric jackhammer with a clay spade bit in there. which helps loosen the soil up. You can dig it out a lot easier. We had this entire job done, I think 5 days total, and that included three separate inspections. We had one inspection. The first inspection was our deputy inspector watching the epoxy dowels go in, and then we had another inspection pre-pour the foundation simultaneously with the foundation of the block wall, and then we had another pre-grout for the block wall, and we have a final inspection as well. So even though this job looks very small, you have all the same steps and processes you would have on any size job. So if you can do this, you can do any size, in other words. Here's my DeWalt mini drill. I'm using that for my 3/4 inch holes on the house. For my 5/8 bars, actually this is a 5/8 drill for 1/2 inch bars. On the foundation dowels, they're going to be 3/4 inch holes for the 5/8 bars. So I switch drills at that point, and I get a bigger drill for the 3/4 holes. Now I've got the cordless DeWalt vacuum. I'm sucking all the dust and debris out of those holes. I'm brushing and then vacuuming to get them nice and clean. That way when the deputy inspector shows up, he checks them to make sure that they're clean and ready for epoxy. He also checks the depth of them, that they are 6 inches deep, before I can put the epoxy in. All right, we're on day 2. Day 2 is going to consist of compaction, rebar, tying, form setting. That was day 1. Special inspections on the way for the rebar dowels. All these holes got to get filled up. If you notice, there's 2 sets there. We're only using 2 of the 4, but 2 of them couldn't get full depth because we hit rebar, so we had to relocate them. And then we've got all your slab dowels there. That's special inspection. In the meantime, we're going to cut the dowel rods. Cut the dowel rods for those rebar dowels, and then wait for special inspection. In the meantime, we'll start setting forms. Here's the rebar right here we're going to be using. We got number 5, where the footing attaches to the existing. Number 4 for your slab dowels. So we're going to start cutting these at. Calls for on the footing dowels 12 inches out, 8 inches in. We're just going to cut it. That's 20 inches. We're going to just cut it 24. Right now, before we start setting any forms, what we're doing here is we're getting the elevation of these string lines right on the money. That way we can check our elevation of the subgrade, that dirt elevation there. So a lot of the footing dirt we did end up throwing in there because this lot had a pretty hard slope. So we had to build it up on the inside somewhat, and we were going to want to not overbuild it, but because we got to allow for 4 inches depth concrete, 2 inches of sand over the top of that native. So we're going to get the native on the money to start with and compact it in. And once that's complete, the reason we did that first before we formed it, it's just a lot easier to get your compactor in there without the forms in the way. Now that sub base is ready for 2 inches sand, 4 inches concrete. Now we're using 2x12s. Remember, the plan only called for 8 inches above the outside, of the concrete. We're actually a foot above because that shows you how much slope is in this backyard away from the house. So even though we're 2 foot into native, we're really 3 feet deep. Now the nice thing about this working in this area is it's just all clay dirt. There's no rock in it, so you can use wood stakes. That's what we're doing here. I do have some steel uprights in there, and I like those because They're just stronger than the wood. They don't bend, and they're easier to get out of the concrete when the concrete's wet. The wood is a lot harder to pull out of wet concrete, because I'll be stripping this the same day that we pour. And the wood will swell up and it's harder to get out, and you leave bigger holes. So the steelies, you can get them out a little easier. And then we'll leave the wood kickers as long as possible. That'll hold the forms until the concrete's very hard, and just pull the 2x12s away. Here's that block wall addition. The reason that's getting extended is we want to bring that out to the end, in line with the new front of the house. Then there'll be a gate in between those 2 points, the corner of the house addition and the end of wall. And that foundation was about 3 feet deep for this particular design on this footing that we did. We could have went wide and shallow, but we went deep and narrow with the footing because there was 3 choices. And I think the homeowner wanted to go with the narrow footing on that wall, just so you save a lot of landscaping space. You can get up closer to the wall, is why you would do a narrow one rather than a big chunk sticking into your yard of footing, even though footings should be 4 to 6 inches below grade typically, but that costs you an extra block. And since when the homeowner broke his old wall out that used to go across here, he salvaged the old blocks so we could rebuild and it would be a perfect match. He didn't have extra blocks to go below grade with him, so we did it exactly the same height as the old foundation. All right, here's your block wall footing, 3 feet deep, 12 inches wide. Foundation footings are from top of concrete. We're about 3 feet down and a little over a foot wide. Really only need to be 2 foot into native, but because of the elevation, the surrounding elevations, we came out of the ground quite a bit. That's why it's 3 feet on the outside edge. Next step is perimeter rebar, 2 number 4s top and bottom, all the way around. Then on the field we've got 1/2 inch rebar as well at 16-inch centers. So the dows are at 32-inch centers. So every bar, every dow will get a continuous bar with a turn down into the footing and then another one in between them. And that's each direction. All right, let's get down to business. So basically what's happening now, we're tying all of our steel in at 16-inch centers, 1/2 inch rebar and a 4-inch slab. And I've got 2-inch dobies, but what I'll do is I'll kind of push the dobies will sink into that sand a little bit. So the rebar will only probably be 1 inch off of the sand, and that way we get a good coverage over the top, which is really perfect placement for this. And once I bring up the rebar off of the sand, it'll actually, since we're tied to our horizontals in the footing, it'll bring it all up at once. And it'll be hanging off of this grid. All my 4 number 4s, 2 top and bottoms around the perimeter, will be suspended by the dobies on the inside. Also, I'll have a couple tie wires hanging down. I got angle braces on those corners of the forms, like you can see here. Those angle braces not only saves you some extra stakes and kickers, but it also gives you a good place to hang your rebar from. Now these anchor bolts are galvanized and they're 12-inch by 5/8. Really the requirement was 7-inch embed for these bolts, but I just go a little extra. So you could have gotten away with 10-inch bolts, but I went with 12. They also call for a 3-inch square washer, 1/4 inch thick. The reason for that, I mean, they've made a lot of different changes in the last 40 years doing concrete. You use 1/2 inch bolts on 6 inch with just a round basic washer, but they've changed that because the plates could pull right through the bolt, and now you've got the big square washer, so that doesn't really happen as easy. Here's that deep footing for the block wall. It's got the 2 bars top and bottom 1/2 inch sandwiched on those verticals, which I've never really seen that particular design before in a block wall, so that's a new one for me. Normally they're spaced, and then you also have turns at the bottom of those verticals in a block wall, but this one was just straight rods down, sandwiched between 1/2 inchers. Here's the footing for the block wall, 3 feet deep, 2 number 4s top and bottom, verticals every 24. That one every 18 because it works out better for this size block. These are 18 6/6. Then we've got over here, we already got completion on the dows. Deputy inspector, that's done. Got all the rebar tied in. Bottom of the foundation is clear and clean of loose debris. Now it's just a matter of tying these bolt hangers. I'm going to pre-hang all the anchor bolts. So you have to do that to get inspection. So we're going to have city inspection tomorrow, and then pour it the following day. So we'll be 4 days into this thing to get it dug out, set up, and poured. 4 days, and then of course finish that block. Most likely during the pour, as this is setting, I'll start building that wall up at the same time. So there's not going to be a whole lot to do on day 5. Waiting on inspection, just doing some final details here. This is what I'm adding, these little 6-inch crossbars at the bottom. See the epoxy? You can't reach it, tie wire down there, so I just used the same epoxy we used for the rebar dowels to temporarily hold that while the concrete encases it. This thing's gonna go off the hook. Everyone's gonna start doing this. I've seen people weld them, and zip time and all kinds of stuff, but I haven't seen this technique yet. Early morning, day 5. We're 6:30 a.m. We're setting up the pump hose in the background, and it's pour day. Let's see how that epoxy held from yesterday. Let me take a look at that. Oh wow, these aren't going anywhere. Those are solid. So what I gotta do today real quick, this little 4x4 post strap's gotta go right about here. Well, maybe I can get it in. Nope. Okay, so I'm gonna have to cut this little 90 right. I could just untie it. I'll just untie it and then slide it right through. I'll slide it right through the bottom of this stirrup and then bring it right around here. Look at how stiff this is a 4,500 psi also. So it's very stiff, and you can stack it straight up. And it just stays where you put it basically. Right on that corner, huh? Gonna be 3/4 in, 3/4 in, so it's gonna be 3/4 this way, 3/4 that way, because he wants plywood coming down like right here and right here. So it's right about there. Yep. We'll mess with that later. Yeah, that's too bad. That was about the positioning of that 4x4. That is determined by the existing house wall. The center wall is straight in line with that. So he just wants to continue that wall out and hit that 4x4 post. So in order for him to get that exact measurement, he had to take the wall down first. That's why the plan changed 2 inches. You have the initial drawing that showed the location of that, but until you really tear the wall open and see the exact location of the wall itself, it was a 2-inch change, no big deal. it didn't have to go back to planning to get revised and all that for a 2-inch maneuver. So we just hit this with a wood bowl float. I've got Tyler, my son, out here on this one with me. And then I got Francisco also out here. While we're doing this wall, this is 10 yards, by the way. Between the foundation and the wall foundation, we did 10 yards and less than a half a yard left, according to the concrete truck driver. Now right here, and what I don't like about plastic is you can't really see what you're doing when you got plastic hanging. So I had to push the plastic back and verify that I'm right on the bottom of that plate. So that way when they get a walk through, wherever point that might be, they don't have a transition right between this floor and the inside of the other house. So that's kind of crucial things that you have to double check. So as we're finishing this, we're also building that wall right there in the background. And those are all extra blocks that the homeowner demoed from the previous wall that went all the way across. I did put an edge right here. If you notice on the form, I had an edge there, 1/2-inch radius. That's because that's where the slider door is going. It's going to get covered anyway, but it's a nice look to start with. Probably going to get pop out with the stucco and all that on the base of the threshold, so that'll all be covered anyway. Here's that edge I was talking about. So this is about 3 hours later, and we're already removing the forms. And you can see with that particular mix that we used, we didn't even tap the side of these forms. There's no rock pockets whatsoever on there. Self-consolidating, in other words. This is a tan slump stone block, and it's 6'6", 18, so it's 6 inches wide, 6 high, 18 long. And then there is going to be a 6'8", 18 that gives it a little decorative value. All right, day 5 and the foundation is completed. Let's take a look at that finished product. Here's your doorway right here. That's why there's no bolt. It's actually a slider going in right here. We put an edge on it. That's kind of optional, but it's nice. Nice little touch. So here it is. The homeowner kept it wet all night, and you can see it's got a puddle there. No big deal. It's gonna have a roof over it anyway, but that's pretty typical on a flat slab. You're gonna get a low spot somewhere. Now what we're doing now is trenching to reconnect the old sprinklers, because the old valves were right about in the middle of this foundation, pretty much right where that puddle is, where the old valves were located. And we're moving them to the outside of the foundation. It's a day after the pour. The block wall is completed. A nice little lake puddle right there. Homeowner kept it wet all night. We got to wait for inspection on this block wall before we grout and cap. You got to look inside, check the steel, and we grout and cap. Today, while we're waiting for inspection, we will be putting the new sprinkler valves in, reconnecting to the old lines. I marked 2 locations here. These are 2 separate valves. And over here I marked another location for another one. This is a single valve. So what I have to do, rebuild. One of them is broken from the removal of the stucco here. So we're gonna put 3 new ones. I gotta rebuild the manifold basically, and then connect them here, run 3 pipes all the way around, drop 2 off there, 1 off over there, and then sprinkler valves are complete. Well, here's the new valves we'll be using. There was previously Hunters in there. Now we're going with Rainbird. Basically with this sprinkler manifold, I just ran 3 pipes up, spaced pretty much evenly, and the height was all the same. Then you just slip them down on the coupling. You could use unions if you wanted to in the middle. That way you could change valves if you needed to ever, but you could also just cut these off and then slap a coupling in at any time. It's pretty simple. Alright, we got the valves glued in. Still got to water testing it. We'll wait about 20 minutes, turn the water back on, see what we got. All right, we have the water on, so we're under pressure. We're under pressure to the back side of these valves, so I don't see any leaks. It's good. All right, complete. So you can see that 6/8/18 just popping out of the block. It just sticks out about 1 inch on both sides. It's just kind of the design this whole neighborhood went with. Then they've got some nice caps, cantilevered over. Now you could, but I don't recommend it, you could have grouted in that seam there, but this way if there's movement, you won't get a crack there. It gives a little space. So typically on block walls, you want no longer than 30 foot and you'd want a cold joint every 30 foot. And we're well over 30 feet if you look to the backyard. So this is a good place for a cold joint. The dowels for the footing, what we did with the footing, I actually doweled into the end of the existing, so it won't shift from the other wall at all, even though we're not doweled in all the way up and down this wall, because they're sitting on pretty much the same footing because it's doweled in now. Looks like we wrapped it up. Got a cold joint here. These are original blocks. These blocks are original from a tear down. The wall used to go across right here. The homeowner knocked those out and salvaged them for this little 7-foot extension. Well, that wraps it up. It's cleanup time and head for the next site. Anyway, thank you for watching. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. Have a good one.